Welcome to the Agency Navigators podcast. I'm Merle.
I'm Don.
I'm Cayla.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Lindsey.
And we have a good assortment of experts here today because we are tackling yet another one of the value drivers for transferable value. This one is your competitive advantage. And how we put it into action is that intuitively, as agency owners, you know your business. You built it. Even if you bought it, you've been building it, or if you built it from scratch. You have your local community ties. You have your hometown team, your regional market knowledge. You know your agency. But times are changing, and the competitive advantage has shifted. And the idea is that we want you to keep evolving. It isn't a one and done when it comes to competitive advantage. What you've known in the past likely is going to be very different for the future. Team, anyone want to chime in on this?
I think there's some that are fundamental to insurance. You're going to hear a lot about, whether you say niche or niche markets that has, been around for decades of specialization. Yet you have newer trends like AI or, more recent, I'm going to say market shifts that also impact your competitive advantage. So are fundamental and some will constantly evolve.
Good. Well said. Well said. The one that comes to my mind, because we've had this in with our agency partners, and Kay, Lindsey, Adam chime in, is higher salaries, virtual opportunities. We've seen many of our agency partners have their team poached or attempt to be poached by large players in different markets. The competitive advantage has shifted. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And it's always constantly evolving. And we must evolve our competitive advantage. It is not something that stays stagnant.
Correct. Lindsey, Adam, anything to add to that? You're both, actually, the two of you having you on the call, Lindsey's in North Carolina, Adam's in Connecticut, and yet you work for AgencyCFO. Cayla's here in New York with us. We were able to find you with a virtual opportunity, and I like to think a pretty competitive package.
Oh,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I came from a completely different type of organization, and just the competitive advantages that this one had were easily able to draw me right over.
Awesome.
And I've
Lindsey?
been working remotely for 23 years at this point. So when Agency CFO found me, remote was my only option. I live in the middle of nowhere.
And I think oftentimes we think competitive advantage of just being clientele. How do we get new clients?
Yeah.
It's also, what is your competitive advantage for recruiting team members, or bringing on the carrier partners or whoever. It takes there's a uniqueness, there's a requirement of value in regards to just multiple, where clients, team members, carriers,
everything. Okay, were you going to say something?
I think sometimes we overcomplicate it, and to simplify, like there's something when you're special, everyone wants to be around that. It's magnetic. It's when we talk about culture and all of these other components of what makes you special, and that's what we're going to break down of what is a competitive advantage. At the end of the day, if you're special, all the best, A players are going to want to be around you, whether it is one of the areas you talked about, whether it's team, carriers, whatever it is in the market, you're special. People know it.
Absolutely. I love that. And the idea is what used to be special, you'd have the Main Street office location. People could walk in, pay in cash. Those days don't make you special anymore. That's not a competitive advantage anymore. The competitive advantage may be to have a really strong renewal process, or to have the best employees regardless of where they are. It has shifted. Or technology solutions. Some people may want the app. Some people may want to just pay online. You've got to have all of those functions. That's true competitive advantage. It's got to be a routine exercise. It's got to be constant. It's not a one and done. So if we think about why this matters today.
Well, I like to rephrase sometimes competitive advantage as value proposition. Why it matters today? Because we run into a lot of owners and management teams that struggle to tell us what their value proposition is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't separate what your value proposition is, then you're really very similar to all of your competition. You don't have differentiation, and that hurts value. If you don't have a compelling value proposition, then how do we prospect? Why is our other, whether we're in personal lines, commercial lines, why are they going to come to your agency?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. If we don't have a strong value proposition for our team members, why are we going to win the best talent? So having that really defined, and I'd like to say, can you repeat it in 30 seconds? Can you tell that value proposition rolls off the tongue? 30 seconds. Because that is what attracts, as Cayla said, that is what attracts new clients, new team members, whether it be carrier relationships, new relationships, regardless, you got to attract.
Draw it in. And why does it matter tomorrow?
Because we have to grow, and we have to compete. We're competing for new clients. We're competing for the best team members. We're competing for the best carriers. We're competing for the best partners. And that's ultimately what drives value. It allows us to grow faster, be more profitable, and all rolls into greater value for the future.
Absolutely. I want to take a quick moment, kind of an aside. When we bought our house 25 years ago, every year we have updated it. We have kept it current. Sometimes they're not fun projects, right? Sometimes you got to replace the AC or fix the roof or fix the driveway. But every year we did that for one purpose.
To keep the value.
Keep it in resale condition.
And I think, if we did,
so funny.
If we didn't, and I think how that translates, if you're an agency owner, when's the last time you updated your value proposition? Did you write it 20 years ago and you're still using it? Chances are it needs to be remodeled and look at it.
I've never made that correlation. And yet when you think about it, you keep your house because it's one of your biggest assets in your personal life, if not the biggest or tangible asset. And you keep it in resale condition. Keep it in resale because you never know what opportunity will come up. Plus, you enjoy it. You're not waiting to the end. Yeah, it wasn't fun spending money to put a roof on a couple of years ago, but I don't worry about my insurance renewals. I don't worry about leaks in a storm or anything. And we have a solid roof. It's solid. I've never ever made that correlation to transferable value in an agency.
Your competitive advantage requires annual maintenance.
Yeah.
And we rarely see it. It's kind of one of those things that, we see agencies kind of set it and forget it, but that's
not the case.
Not healthy. So
the three of you, Adam, Lindsey, and Cayla, thoughts on that? Because we didn't talk about that before. We didn't prep that. That was literally a real off the rails, spur of the moment comment.
I think that was probably the best definition or the best comparison to make to explain a value proposition for anything, because everybody can relate to it. And no, I had never made that correlation before either.
I remember very early on when I started Agency CFO, then agency owner said, I always run it like I'm going to sell it. And that was always this mentality. He did end up selling. But the idea is he got to make a whim of a choice to finally make that sale because he kept it current. He kept it up to date. He invested in all the right areas. So again, not fun projects sometimes, but the right areas to update, like your roof, like your driveway. Those are still the foundational elements to a great asset. So I think if you're going to run it like you're going to sell it at any given point in time, it's the freedom to make that choice.
Well said, Kay and Lindsey, both of you. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say you made that was a really good way of making something it's rather intangible, but putting that metaphor on it makes it really tangible. It's, think about kind of anywhere in life where there's a competitive advantage to be had. They even say it's the same thing with sports athletes. They learn the fundamentals. Those never go away. You're always working on those. You're always practicing those. But at the same time, you're iterating and keeping up with the times and making sure that, anything new coming down the pipeline is in your purview as well. And you have the ability to kind of look at it and say, this thing could either enhance my competitive advantage or maybe something coming down could hinder it. So having that ability to see those sides of it, because again, like the house, is it you have a roof that needs to get fixed and you have something that you want to do, what's going to be your real competitive advantage down the line, doing those in a certain order.
Absolutely. And there's in all of this, and we'll come back to the narrow point in just a quick second. In all of these value drivers, there's a universal truth, and it's a hard one. At some point, every single one of us, owner, employee owner, whatever it is, you will exit your agency. And unfortunately, sometimes it's unexpected and not for a good reason. And you might as well keep it current, keep it up to date, keep it in resale condition. And that takes a layer of stress, a layer of burden off of everything. All right, I know that got heavy quick, but for a very good reason. So your agency today, what brings an advantage?
Well, I think it all comes down to what makes you so special. Because if you don't have anything special, then you're just like everybody else out there, and you're not going to attract the talent you need, the clients you need, or anything else. So when looking and evaluating what your advantage is or what it might be and identifying that, do you have any niches within the industry? Do you have any carrier relationships or unique markets that nobody else around you has? Do you have any consulting services that aren't offered by your competitors or by anybody in your area or your markets, or any specialized service models? And do you use technology to your advantage and to your client's advantage? Do you offer various options? Some clients are going to want the AI. They're going to want online. They're going to want to not talk to anybody, but some people still want that human touch and they still want customer service. So do you have both? What market are you going after if you only have one or the other? And do you have a community reputation or a recognized brand that draws people in?
And that's today. That is absolutely the awareness of what you have today is part of that maintenance of how you're going to translate it into tomorrow and beyond.
Absolutely. These things are core. They are essential. Otherwise, sorry to say, you are selling a commodity, and the last place you want to be is having your insurance. When you think about a policy, selling an insurance, it should not be a commodity.
Ooh, this turned out to be much deeper than I thought. It's amazing. What about you guys? I mean, we're heavy into it already.
Yeah, I think somebody actually said, "Oh, this is the easy one," right? Before we got on.
I know. That'll teach us. All right, Kay, why don't you tell us what our red flags are?
So we do a 90-point assessment if you've ever worked with Agency CFO, and a lot of these questions mimic what we actually look for. And I'm going to tie it a little bit more. I'll read off the slide a little, but I'll tie it back to why we're looking at this and why this is a red flag for us. When I look at, do you primarily compete on price? Price is an important component of any sale, but if you're leading with it, how many times do you end up with a book of business that's maybe with, not to be mean to them, but progressive, or somewhere you're not getting a bonus? Consider your contingency, your profit share, any quarterly bonuses. If you're competing on price, you're probably not always selling your best carrier because you're going off of just the price alone, not what you offer in totality. That impacts your revenue coming in. Do producers rely on relationships rather than expertise? How much is that hindering their growth and what they can actually perform at? Is your messaging clear? Is it, communicating the way that you want to? And I always say, look at the demographic of your book, the age demographic. If you have predominantly an older demographic, why would you offer text messaging or maybe something that they don't necessarily want? They probably want a phone call. If you have a much younger demographic, they probably want some of the technology enhancements that they've grown up with and are looking for a different communication style. That clarity of communication is going to change on the platform and who exactly you're actually talking to. Do you try to serve everyone? It's okay to be a generalist and have a generalist message, but know the difference of whether or not you want to compete like a specialty market or you're okay growing at a generalist pace. You cast a wide net, but you don't always get the longevity of some long-term clients that have to stay with you because you're special in what you offer. And lastly, I'm going to tie the last two together. Do you become interchangeable with competitors? If your price is low, isn't as low as the other competitor, is it really easy to go down the street and just start working with them? Because there's nothing special about your client experience or what you offer outside of that price. A lot of what Don said. What else can you offer me as a consumer that's going to make me pick you other than you have the best rate? You might have the best rate that year, but what happens to next year when something happens and I leave you? You don't get that renewal revenue after you probably already cut a check for the producer commission. If you bought the lead, you already lost a lot of money on bringing that in the first year. You want to make that up on the first renewal because that's really where your money is.
And what's interesting, Kay, as you started to talk about that, and I see producers rely heavily, there is also, you were talking about the different generations. When an agency is looking at the team, if we insert the team into this, how many agencies have all of us seen that they have an aging producer roster and they don't have the young talent to fill in as the producers grow their books, they slow down their new business production because they've got a good book, they start to a little retirement mindset or all out retire. What happens? You've lost the competitive advantage because those relationships are gone and you didn't backfill.
Absolutely. I think we end up in the day-to-day so often that these are things that we don't put enough thought to.
Absolutely. Good deal. All right, Adam, take us into the future.
All right. So, one of the big ones is, all the green flags, all the kind of things that you want to look at going into the future to make sure that you have yourself set up in a nice structure to be able to have that competitive advantage in the market. One of the big ones is, going down the checklist here. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, we do have a little presentation here, so you can always jump in and take a look at that or reach out to us. But identifying industries and niches where you already have experience, that's a lot of times, if you have a lot of customers coming in, things like that, you may really know where your niches are. Maybe it's commercial, maybe it's personal. But us, again, at Agency CFO, we have tools that'll help you figure that out if you ever need some assistance. But after you identify those, you want to build specialized expertise in those markets. So, again, if you have a primarily personal lines book in a primarily personal lines market, you want to be, making sure that you're going very specialized in a lot of those things. Again, don't ignore the other lines of business, things like that, but you want to really make sure that you can support what you're best at. And then you want to create consistent service models and processes. Again, service models can change very vastly between, again, a commercial or a personal product, or, if you're doing more non-standard or more standard, things like that. And another part is, definitely investing in the technology that helps improve the overall client experience. A lot of times today that kind of actually integrates with the point right before, with creating those service models and processes, because there's a lot of systems nowadays where you can start to build a lot of those processes right into the system and, help your team out along with that, or even just automate that process right through so the customer can kind of do some things on their own. Again, you want to develop through leadership and brand recognition. Again, as Cayla was mentioning, with marketing, with brand voice, with all of that, you want to make sure that the leadership is, handing that down to all of the producers, all the employees. So it kind of becomes like, the language and the vibe, so to speak, if you will, of the agency itself. That'll help bring recognition. People will be able to, emotionally invest in that. They'll attach to that. And then training producers to communicate the agency's unique value. That's a really big one. Obviously your producers are the front lines. They're your first point of contact a lot of times with your clients. So you want them really, parading that flag for the agency, not just trying to sell a policy. They want you want them to actually, pull these people into the family almost.
Absolutely. And as I heard you go through all of them, Adam, the one word that kept coming to my mind was evolution.
Yes, I would totally agree with you.
Evolve. They have to evolve because competitive advantage is what separates an average agency from the high value agency. You want your growth to be more focused. You want your client relations to be stronger. You want not only your producers, your whole team to have that confidence and clarity. It goes on and on. You're less dependent on price. You're more scalable. It's got to be woven into the fabric. And this isn't chasing every shiny object.
No, you should not.
That's not competitive advantage.
You should not change it just on a whim. Your competitive advantage takes development, takes a lot of effort. You want to really focus it, but absolutely develop it.
And in the end, this is really one of those instances where you're working on the business instead of in it. Thoughts? Anyone else have anything to add? That's my take.
The one last thing I'll add is if you're still thinking about geography, I think we all moved into a borderless world, and we often talk to owners who think they're constrained. Well, my market is. And I think about if you have a strong enough competitive advantage, you can take your advantage and apply it across the country. And I would say that is something I would love more to consider.
Kay, awesome. Kay, what did you want to add?
Yeah. And Nick, going with that, I'm thinking how do you listen to this and take something and just do one thing after this podcast? And, if you just take even 30 minutes, set it aside and ask yourself, what's holding me back? Is it growth? Consider the growth of your agency where you're at today. What's holding you back from today or your future? Do you have a goal that you want to get to, a runway that you're looking to close soon? And generally, if you take all of those statements, make a list of all the things holding you back, those are generally areas you can improve that competitive advantage and move you forward, even if you picked one thing off that list.
And
fabulous.
On the flip side of that coin, ask yourself what you're really good at. What are we awesome at? Who do we sign every time? What kind of clients absolutely love us and sing our praise down the line and bring us new customers, things like that.
Wow.
Look at what you're bad at and improve that, and look at what you're really good at and keep grinding on that too.
Love it. Love. Lindsey, anything to add?
Just that there's tens of thousands of independent agencies in the United States, and you have to figure out what makes you relevant and really cash in on that.
All right. I think we have really delved far deeper than we thought into this topic. Really interesting. As always, please reach out. Adam mentioned we have these slides that we've shared the information. Happy to share it. Happy to have conversations. As always, follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We are on social media. Reach out to us. And thank you.
Thank you. And financial wellness goes hand in hand with your competitive advantage.